nowadays everybody's saying it's too late to go into mobile, right? It's so crowded, it's so hard. But actually back then in 2016, everybody told us exactly the same thing.
How do you achieve a 9-figure exit in mobile gaming? Hello and welcome to Growth Masterminds. My name is John Koetsier. Today is a real treat. We're chatting with a serious OG in mobile games. He dropped out of university, reinvented the Idle Tycoon genre, bootstrapped a game studio, achieved a 9-figure exit to Ubisoft, and now invests in mobile and other businesses. He's a co-founder of Kolibri Games, makers of the Idle Tycoon series, and his name is Daniel Stammler. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you very much.
I want to talk about all the stuff you've done, which has been pretty incredible, and all the stuff that you're seeing come up as well. But I kind of want to start here because it's kind of the genesis of your mobile story. What's the appeal of an idle game, and why did you jump on that?
So for us, the reason why we decided to go into Idle was because it's an amazing genre in which you can create so many positive feelings and emotions for the player. Of course, you played like shooters, and nowadays, like when I play PUBG, I get killed like within like 2-3 minutes, and I feel really, really bad. If you play idle games, this doesn't happen. Whatever you do, you always progress. You always go back into the game because you know there will be a reward for you. You can invest it back. And when we started with idle, there were some idle games, so we did not invent the idle genre. But all the idle games we played, they were quite niche, quite nerdy, like showing numbers and like in exponential or in a scientific way, where we knew like my mom would never ever play those games. Or there are other games like Tap Titans, for example, great games. We played them like crazy, but it's like very dark, very niche. So basically, the appeal of Idle Tycoon games is you have this progress feeling. You always get better in the game. You will not be frustrated, but at the same time, kind of like it feels nice, very accessible. And after a stressful day at work, you go into the game and you basically just build your own universe.
What I want to know is, what did you see in 2016 when you started the game studio and you started reinventing idle games? What opportunity did you see? Did you stumble on it? Did you like analytically derive it? How did you see the big opportunity that you eventually took advantage of?
The funny thing is now, like nowadays, everybody's saying it's too late to go into mobile, right? It's so crowded, it's so hard. But actually back then in 2016, everybody told us exactly the same thing. So everybody told us mobile is too late. There are games like Clash of Clans, Candy Crush, and so on. They basically own the market. Performance marketing is already so expensive. There's no reason to even try to go into mobile. And of course, us coming out of uni, we were super naive. We played Clash of Clans, we played Candy Crush. We looked up the numbers. We realized they're making a billion or more per year. So we thought like if we can make like 10% of that, we will have a great successful business. So we just decided to go into mobile gaming, even though everybody told us it's not possible anymore to go into mobile gaming.
Typical entrepreneur story, right? I mean, too naive, too dumb, too unaware of the huge challenges you just jump in, you do what you do, and it's amazing, right? Fools jump in where angels fear to tread, and sometimes it really works out. That's really, really cool. What factors, though, enabled you to grow so big? Because guess what? There's probably 10,000 people who were there at the same time and said, hey, I'm going to do a game anyways. I'm going to build this. I'm going to make a studio. What factors enabled you to grow so big?
I think the first factor is just luck. I think we were at the right time, right place. I think there were so many things that could have gone wrong that didn't go wrong just because of luck. So I think that's always very important to appreciate. However, I also believe we did a few things right. So let me describe how we approached the game itself. So basically what we did is we played all successful mobile games. I think we like the top 200 in terms of grossing, and this sounds quite fun. But actually so we did this over like 6 months or so. And after you play 20 or 30 of them, it starts to be really tough because, of course, are usually the same core, same game, same monetization, and so on. But you really, really learn a lot about the mobile gaming industry. You learn what works, what doesn't work. You learn like what is it that like all those 200 games do exactly the same way, and then you can probably also do it the same way because then there's probably no room for innovation. On the other hand, you quickly learn like what are the things that differentiate the games? What are the things that kind of like are very different in different games? Then you learn like those are the levers that you can probably pull. And what we did after like really playing the market, and by the way, so we built like a 10 versus 10 multiplayer game at the same time, which completely failed. And because we didn't do what it's family now. But during this, we played those games, and then we really got a feeling for the market, and we really thought like, why isn't there like an idle game that has like elements of like the games like Clash of Clans, where you build up your world, and also elements of like casual games where it's very easy to get into the game. And so basically our hypothesis was there needs to be an idle game that is easy to play, that provides the same kind of like progression features as those pure original idle games do. And that also includes the world building element, where you don't just like simply prestige all the time and basically do the same thing again, but where you're actually building up your world. This was our hypothesis. So we built an MVP, and very agile. It took us 8 weeks to build the very first iteration of the game. We just released it because, again, we were too naive to do something like soft launch. So we just pressed on go live, both on Google and Apple. And then we got like a few hundred organic downloads per day. So this is basically how we approached it. And then the organic actually grew to like a few thousand per day. And back then we were still in our student apartment. So we didn't have any money for performance marketing. We also didn't really respect the performance marketing, which turned out to be quite naive. And then we got like a good baseline of downloads. And I think the reason for that is like that we created the new genre with this hypothesis of making idle accessible. And I think this is the reason why we were able to start with outperforming marketing, because nowadays, of course, like if you release a game, you get like 20 downloads usually for free. And actually, it was the same back then as well. We were just, we didn't know it, and we focused on inventing a new genre. So basically, the stores rewarded us with players. And I think this is still like, this approach is still true. So we don't believe in like the McKinsey approach of going on App Annie, looking up, finding out that Monopoly Go is the most successful game right now, and building a copy of it. I think you will not be successful with that approach. I think you will be more successful if you think bottom up, what would be a great game, what works in the market, what do players actually want to play, and then you build exactly the.
So much to unpack in what you just said there. I absolutely love that you mentioned luck, because all of us who achieve any level of success in anything, there's factors beyond our control. So that makes a ton of sense. But I also know that you said you did 6 months of research, played all of the top 200 grossing games, and then built some in 8 weeks. 6 months of research, 8 weeks of build. Most people would flip that. And if they did 8 weeks of research, right? And so that's absolutely critical. You saw so much, you experienced so much. You probably embedded in your DNA what was working as a successful game experience, what you liked, what you didn't like, all those things, and then built something super quick. That's pretty amazing.
To be fair, like the 6 months of research, we built or tried to build another game at the same time. So we didn't do like pure research. I would never recommend to research for 6 months without building anything.
Yeah. Wow. I can see how playing 200 games and forcing yourself to play 200 games, even when maybe it's not your favorite genre, even when maybe, no, I don't like that kind of game. That can be a bit of a challenge. But I absolutely love that. And I actually really love that idea, because you were experiential. There was analytics, but you were experiential versus, like you said, the McKinsey approach, go to App Annie, or what is it called now? They got acquired by Sensor Tower. That's what they got acquired. You know what? We're all out of date. It was App Annie, then it was Data.ai, then it got acquired by Sensor Tower. So, yeah. What mistakes did you avoid? I mean, I'm sure you made a ton, but you obviously made enough right calls to succeed. What big mistakes did you avoid?
I'm a big believer in building games in an agile way, because I think if you build it agile step by step, you will automatically avoid a lot of product-related mistakes, because you will basically build or be relatively close to what your audience wants. So to give you a concrete example, when we built Idle Tycoon, the first version like had one mime and core loop. You could hire a manager. You basically have like the mine shaft, you have the elevator, you have like the ground stuff, and you have this loop. And this was the core gameplay. Super fun. You play it. You get hooked by it. You play it for a few days. But then eventually, of course, even before we released the game, we had ideas about how the game should look like in the future. So what should the meta game be like? And our idea that we had in mind was that we will just take this one mine and make it more complicated, basically add different features within the mine, and maybe different buildings within the mine, basically make the core loop more complex, because we thought people will get tired of this like repeating core loop and we need to add more complexity. But like we said, we only have 8 weeks for the first MVP, so we didn't implement any of that. And fast forward, we released the game, we fixed some bugs after releasing, we had super good developer retention. And then basically every second question we got from the players was like, when can we play another mine? I think we started with like the gold mine or so, and they wanted to like play like a diamond or like something else. And we quickly realized what people actually want is they want more of the same experience. They don't want like a more complex core loop, but they want like play the same experience again and again. And then of course there's still some meta game. And this was such an impactful insight for us, because if we would not have released the game after 8 weeks, we would have built the game in a way more complex way and basically complicated the core loop. And I think by doing that, we would have built the game. However, by releasing early, working agile, actually learning what the players want, we were able to avoid that big mistake and build the game in a way where we knew, where we understood the audience wanted. And of course, like people will always tell you like, so you need to differentiate the feedback. Players will always tell you like, this is too expensive. I hate free to play, blah, blah, blah. So of course, like you should not just make everything for free or cheaper because the players tell you it's too expensive. But at the same time, if all the people tell you they want more mines, well, probably you should just build more mines and extend your content in this way instead of doing something more complex. So to go back to your question, like I think on the product standpoint, the biggest mistake we avoided was to build something that nobody wants to play.
Mm-hmm. What your answer makes me think of is sometimes I really wonder if people who are making a game or an app in general really understand what their game is about, really understand why people play the game or use the app. There's one game that I play quite frequently, and they keep adding stuff and they keep adding stuff. And there's this and there's that and there's this and there's that. And it's like, I'm just here for the game. I'm just playing. I'm just trying to have some fun. I don't need 50,000 different ways to do X or that sort of thing. And so I wonder about that. Super, super interesting. We touched on it almost a little bit because you touched on UA. You were getting a couple hundred, then a couple thousand organic downloads. That was great. It was wonderful. It was great. You didn't know how lucky you were. You didn't believe in paid user acquisition at the time, performance marketing at the time. Right now is an interesting time, right? Because we've gone through sort of the hyper casual. We're sort of in the hybrid casual now. And of course, there's all these things. There's still very casual, hyper casual games coming out. Your focus was building games that people wouldn't play for a day or a week or a month. Your focus was building games that people will play for years. How do you look at the current marketplace when you see people building games that, you know, it's turn and burn, right? And you know, we'll get a new game out and somebody will play it for a month and then they want another one and they want another one. How do you feel when you see that?
I mean, that's a hard challenge, right? Obviously, like all the hyper casual or hybrid casual developers, they want to build games that people play for years, not like they deliberately only build limited games. But the hard part is to build a game that actually with support. And at the same time, you will never know before you release the game how good the long-term retention, especially now in the hybrid casual genre. I think that's actually the biggest challenge. Like you see a lot of newcomers that build really good games that make like 5 to 10 million a month, and that are like 70% at base. And I think for them, a lot of them will have the challenge of actually staying or growing on top, because if you think like from a company standpoint, what you want to build is equity value, right? You want to build a company that has value in itself. And you don't want to build just a game that makes a few million for a few months and then basically just goes down. Because the real value is in those long-term successful games. If you have a game like Candy Crush that is growing year over year, franchise worth many billions. You have a game that declining after launch, super hard to actually create any like long-term business value with it. So I believe that if I were a builder, I would probably try to build games that have long-term retention, but that's easier said than done. At the same time, like the big advantage of hybrid casual is that you get players into the game relatively easy. So like thinking about it, probably the best example are those 4X games now, like I think Last Course, probably one of the best one, where you play the game and it feels like a hyper casual game. You see the ad, just go in there and you have this hyper casual onboarding, and it actually sticks with the core loop. So it's not like in the past where you have like a fake ad and basically you go into the game and it's 4X fighting books paper whatever. But you actually play that hyper casual game for quite some time and then gradually evolved into a 4X game, which has their higher motivation or long-term retention. So I think this is probably the way to go to kind of like smooth in player, because focusing on long-term retention from the very beginning is super hard because most games will not have the short-term retention that you need for long-term retention. If you lose like 70% of players on the first day, it's basically impossible to have high long-term retention.
Yes.
So I believe you can start from the back. You need to start from the front, which means day 1, day 7, day 30. Like you need to have a concept in mind of how you can build the game in a way where it's able to grow over many years.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you mentioned right off the top, 2016, you're starting out. Everybody's saying, don't start a mobile game. It's a crowded space. There's way too much there. And the same thing is happening right now, right? It reminds me of the guy who led the U.S. Patent Office in like 1901. He said, everything that can be invented has been invented, right? It's like nothing else can be done. Of course, it's never true, but we see everything that's out there. If you see the current mobile gaming scene, what's interesting to you?
But what's interesting is that there are still newcomers that basically build great games and are successful with it. And like Less More, for example, is all three worked at Kolibri before, so we know them quite well. And they started a company. I think they got like 100K or something in invest, so really small investment. And they have 2 successful games now with Eat Ventures and We Are Warriors, making many millions a year. So it is obviously possible to come kind of like out of nowhere, build great games. You don't need to have like tens of millions or even millions in funding to be able to build great games. So I think those are the examples that you can still be successful, basically the same way we were with Kolibri Games, focusing on great product. And on the other end of the spectrum, there are games like Monopoly Go that also came out of nowhere basically, and are super successful. But both games show, or both gaming companies show, that you can enter the market in different ways. So not like impossible to build great games that are successful, you know? And I think so some things are harder, right? Like performance marketing is probably not as easy as it was 2014 when it was basically invented or came into the mobile space. And at the same time, what is much easier now is to have all the tech stack and all the performance product tech related aspects. So you can build a great game with a team of 5 people now. You can market it yourself. You don't need to build your own backend anymore. It's much easier to actually build and go into the market. So I think that there's a lot of negativity about the market and IDP and so on, and some of that might be true. At the same time, there are many improvements as well within the industry. And thinking forward with things like AI, it might even accelerate, or it might even be easier in a few years to build great games with a smaller team and create a lot of content and so on. So in general, I'm very optimistic about the mobile gaming space, especially because the fact that will still be the fact in probably 10 years is most people play games on their phone. That's just a fact. And they don't care about IDFA, they don't care about what we are talking about. They just take their phone and play games. And I don't see anything that will disrupt this behavior in the near future. So people will not switch to VR, AR, or their watch or whatever within the near future. There is no device, no breakthrough that will come. So people will play games on their phone. And of course, like maybe the distribution changes a little bit between established players and new players. Maybe some genres are more impacted or not, where if it changes. But the fact remains that people still play games on their phone and will continue to do so.
It will be interesting over the next few years. You're in Europe, of course, you have the Digital Markets Act, so you're going to have some app store competition. Apple is fighting hard to make that as bad as possible and as hard as possible to make money on, but it will come, and the EU will essentially force them to make it at least reasonably possible and not insanely expensive to operate your own app store or distribute apps from that. That'll be an interesting world in a couple of years, and that'll go across the world as well. When you see what's out there, what's investable? I mean, if somebody comes to you and they've got a game, what are you looking for? If you're going to put maybe that 100K seed investment that Les Moore got, what are you looking for that makes you say, yes, I want to do that?
And that's the hard part, right? Because if you are very right with it, you can be very successful, but it's also very easy to be wrong with the hypothesis. So, and especially in mobile gaming, it's very like black or white, right? You either, if you want to invest at a low valuation, you need to invest in the team, maybe in the idea, but there cannot be no proof of success, because once you have basically a soft launch numbers, or you have a market test that proves that you have good KPIs, then the company is immediately like valued at like 20 million or so. And then to be successful from an investor, and especially like as we are early stage investors, you need to be early in, because investing in 20 million valuation, if it's super successful, you make 10x, but chance will end up at like 100 million, but not everybody will end up there. So the hard part is kind of like, when do you invest? Because from what we try, usually there's like a small window of like a few weeks where they get their very first numbers in, because they spend 500 bucks on Facebook. They see that they run retention, but they don't really know yet if it's really that good. Maybe they start talking to some people in the industry, or go to talk to some VCs to see if they want to invest or not. And then there's basically like no phase where I think if you're able to invest, the risk reward will be very good for you as an investor, because the company is still valued at like a pre-seed level, whereas the upside or your risk is way lower, because you see the first cohort basically. But to do this, you really need to go into the details. It's never obvious, of course, what game will be successful or not. And if it were obvious, they most likely would not take your money anymore. And I think so basically we focus on two things: team and product. So we try to test the team, of course, like building Kolibri Games. We work with many very talented people over the years. So I believe we have a relatively good feeling for when it's a good team, what's not a good team. You can see like what are the prototypes they build, what do they think about free-to-play monetization, and so on. So I think you can get a grasp if they have a general understanding of how the market works or not. And then product. However, like I said, on the product side, it's quite hard to decide when you want to invest or not, because you can, like, it's so easy to be fooled. You play a game, you play a prototype, it feels so good. Then they soft launch it, you look at the numbers, and the one retention is 20%.
Yeah.
And then you know that game is perhaps more 10. So I think that's the hard part, to kind of like try to decide how many points of like proof do you need before you invest in the product, versus how much do you trust basically on the team.
So hard, so challenging. I totally get it. One thing that you just said there just seconds ago, kind of, it's like a dagger through my heart, right? You know, you launch your game, your baby, and you get 20%, D1 retention, D2 retention type of thing. And I'm just wondering, I mean, there's got to be some hope. There's got to be some stories of apps, games that had horrible launches and succeeded. I don't know. I think I have to hope that they exist.
I think they do exist, but they are very rare, and it's very, very risky, because it's kind of like a never-ending story, right? So you release the game, and then you're like, okay, maybe it's because of this, then you invest a few weeks, then the one retention doesn't really improve, or maybe it improves on 20 to 25%, which kind of feels good because it improved, but at the same time, objectively, it's still bad to invest a few more weeks, and so on. And basically what you end up with, is a game that you spend like half a year on that maybe ends up at 35% labor retention. It's still too bad to be profitable with performance marketing, that you lost so much time and use it like with some cost you already put in. You're like one more week.
Yeah.
And I think that's a builder that's so hard to decide when do you let your game die versus how much do you keep investing, because at the same time, usually you will not just build a prototype within 2 weeks to release it and end up with 60% day one retention. Because in the market it's too competitive, the games out there are too good. So you need to put some time and energy into the game to even give it a chance of being successful. But how much to put in and how long to continue, how long to try improving it, I think that's where basically that's what decides about the success in the end.
I think we have a lot to learn from a company like Supercell in that scenario where they've killed 3, 4, 5 games, right? That were big games. These were not developed in 8 weeks. These were developed in months, maybe 8 months, maybe longer, right? And millions of dollars invested. And if it's just not getting what they want, they focus where they think they can get something better. Absolutely hard decision to make. If you were starting a new mobile gaming studio today, what would you do?
Also surprised. So one thing I'm sure I would do is to use an agile approach. So I would probably not think too much. Like I would not build the company based on one product, but I would build the company based on an approach of building games. And then in a second step, like try to find a product. Because I believe if you build the game based on one product if you build the company based on one game idea, you will end up being too attached to that one game. And then especially like if you end up raising money for that game and teach everybody why this game will change the world, it's too hard to kill the game. And it's too hard to iterate.
Essentially, you'd run your company like a venture capitalist. You'd invest a little in this game, a little in that game, a little in that game, see which one hits.
At the same time, I would probably not like that. I think the key is with every try, you need to become better at what you're doing, and you need to create learnings. Otherwise, if you have like the same general success with every new try, you will like the chances of success are too low. Because I think like if you just go out there, build your first game, it will most likely. So you need to have some learning within the company or within the product team or whatever, be able to increase the chance of success of every new try. And I think to do this, you would probably have to focus on a genre or on a type of game so that you can both have like the product learnings, what works, what doesn't work, but also the tech learnings where you don't have to build everything from scratch. But if you, I guess sometimes I see companies like they try like a shooter game and then they try Midway and then they try Idle. There's like the different teams for everything, but there is no overarching learning if you do that. And I think you need to have something where every sale basically increases the success chances of the next try.
Thank you for adding that second part of focusing in a genre or an area, because I was going like, sometimes it's so hard to know what the learnings are. That failed, and I know a few things that went wrong, but is that like I can never do those things again, right? And if I switch to a different genre, then my world of variables just increased massively, right? And so my ability to focus in on the right failures versus the wrong ones that aren't necessarily indicative of future failure, it gets harder. So that narrows the field. That makes a lot of sense. What's one factor that tells you a publishing studio is likely to win?
So if it were that easy, I would probably just be the most successful gaming investor now.
$1 million. I
think what's very important is kind of like it needs to fit together. Like the team needs to fit to the area or product that they build. It needs to fit to the process they have. Kind of like, so if you want to build a 3D shooter game, you should have some developers that are really good at building 3D shooter games or product management that did it before, or at least has like a deep understanding. And this is obviously like a simplified and easy example. But to kind of like see, is the team really able to execute on what they want to do? Do they have the right profile? Do they have the right understanding? And because like building mobile games, so dependable on what kind of game you actually build. How do you market the game? How long is the soft launch? Do they need like, if you build a 3D shooter game, obviously building the prototype will take much, much longer than building a super simple hybrid idle clicker game where you can maybe build the prototype in 2 weeks. So kind of like it needs to fit together. I think culturally the team also needs to kind of like fit to what they're doing. And what I with a lot of like more pressure indie kind of teams, I see a big lack of like appreciation for free to play. So for us, this would be for example, a rest, like if a team tells us like they don't like free to play, and the game, especially on mobile, it will never be successful because you need to really live free to play. Otherwise, there's no chance of being successful. Kind of like for you need to have this business mindset, but at the same time, sometimes you talk to people that where it feels like they could work at Goldman Sachs as well because they're only focused on like the financial and business aspect to calculate how they're going to scale LTV over the next few years and so on. They build those nice models, and then you want to talk to them about like the game, how they want to build a great game, and they have no idea. So for them, like if the game is only like a way to earn money, I believe they will also not be successful because then the chance of building a great game are too low. So in the end, I think you need both. You need to have the commercial mindset. You need to appreciate that you need to make money with free-to-play a game that needs to be marketed. But at the same time, you also need people that play games, that understand games, that have fun playing games, that really hopefully also are spenders in games themselves. So they kind of like understand mobile gaming.
Mm-hmm. Love it. You need that spark. You need that creativity. You need that je ne sais quoi. That there's something there, right? There's something that's going to grow. You kind of almost answered it. I wonder if you have a different one. Is kind of funny because I asked you what one factor tells you they'll win. I want to ask you what one factor tells you that they'll lose, and it reminds me. Wasn't it Tolstoy who said every happy family is alike in the same way? Every unhappy family is different in their own way. What is there a factor besides this overarching commercial focus, McKinsey approach that you?
If I would have to pick one, I would probably pick like the people or indie game studios that don't want to make money. I think so. Then I think it's basically impossible, because if you think of like all the successful mobile games, the only way to have this mindset, the only way to be successful is to have organic download, and having organic download, I believe, is impossible for most games now. But you will know it might work from time to time on Steam if you broke a game and that is focused on like pure great gameplay without modification, but on mobile it never works. So basically, this would be one red flag where we know immediately that this game will not be successful or this company will not be successful.
Yeah, makes sense. This has been a ton of fun. This has been really enjoyable. I want to thank you for taking this time and thank you for sharing your insight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.